every challenge in business gives us an opportunity to grow as a leader, but it's really how we show up in the world, how we show up with our team, and then our own mindset.
Hi, everyone. It's Kara Golden with The Kara Golden Show, and I'm so excited to have my next guest here, who is not only a guest, but also an amazing, amazing entrepreneur and founder and CEO and friend, and just an awesome person, Allison Maslin. And we actually both are Arizona State University grads, but we did not know each other there. We figured it out much, much later. Lots of fun. But she is the CEO of this amazing company called the Pinnacle Global Network that she has built. And it's just a world leader in scaling companies and empowering business leaders. I mean, just this amazing company that, while you may not have heard about it, we're going to talk a little bit more about her company and kind of what she's built from scratch. And what I love about Allison is that she's really about lifting other people up, and just incredible. I actually met Allison when she invited me to speak at her conference, her Scale conference, a couple of years ago, which is really, really incredible, and actually asked me to be a part of her Wall Street Journal best-selling book, Scale or Fail, which, if you haven't picked up that book, it is such a great book. It was also endorsed by Damon John and Barbara Corcoran, and just really, really incredible what she's done. And even more interesting, well, I'm going to save that as a surprise, just so that nobody actually leaves quite yet until they actually hear the surprise. I'm going to talk about her passion and a little bit of her hobby, which I think is really unique. So very, very excited to have you here, Allison.
Ah, thanks, Kara. I am so honored to be here, and I just love chatting with you. So this is another great opportunity to do that, and love your show. So thank you for having me.
I love having you here. So let's talk a little bit about Allison. So you built, well, a little bit of background. Where did you grow up, and kind of how did you get to be Allison?
Yeah, I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, saying y'all to everybody. I grew up in a very entrepreneurial family. My grandfather started a women's clothing store called Maslin's in Kansas City, and then they won another store in a poker game. True story. My dad and my grandfather went to Tulsa, Oklahoma to check out this store. And so they ended up, saying, okay, we'll take it, and moved there, and then built over 50 locations across the country. So my
Wow.
whole childhood was really being around this energy of passion and innovation, and you can do anything that you set your mind to. And so that's all really that I knew, Kara, and I couldn't hold a job for more than 2 weeks, so I knew I was really unemployable, so I better figure out this entrepreneurial thing. And I started my first business when I was 19, actually
At
at
Arizona State
ASU.
University? Yeah, so
I
what was this
did.
business? I don't know this about you.
Yeah, it was called Expressions by Allie, and I loved writing poetry, and so I was doing it for gifts, and then people started asking me, oh, could you do it for my friend's birthday or for my aunt or their anniversary? And so I would find out things about them, nicknames, little things, and I'd write these custom poems, do calligraphy, and boom, I made 25 bucks. I was like, oh my God, this is so cool.
That is
So
awesome.
that was my first business. And then, I went to I don't actually really count it, but that was my first entry into entrepreneurialism. And I remember telling my dad, hey, Dad, I've found my calling. I'm going to be a poet. And he's like, oh, Allie, that's just so great. I'm so proud of you. But did you know poets don't really become known until they're dead? That's what he said to me. I
Oh
was
my
like,
God, that's
Dad,
hysterical.
you're such a buzzkill,
That is
So,
so funny.
Yeah, so that's how it all started, and then it evolved into being a full service advertising and PR firm by the time I was 25. So I had people saying, "Well, I don't really want any poems," and but do you do brochures? And then it was, do you do radio? Then do you do television? Do you do PR? And I didn't know how to do any of those things. I was a journalism major, so I didn't really. I probably took one advertising class, something like that. But I had a knack for it. It was a great, great first run learning about marketing and so forth. And the business just took off. I just kept saying yes and then asking for help. I would hang out at the radio station, TV station, say, teach me everything I need to know. And had clients like Ben and Jerry's and Supercuts and Allstate, Merrill
Incredible.
Lynch, and yeah, so that was my first entry to being an entrepreneur. And it's so interesting, Kara, because you and I, being women founders at the time, at that age, it was really unusual to see. There weren't that many business owners at my age, especially as a woman. And I remember, mostly talking to men and older men who would look at me like, does this girl know what she's doing? I remember trying to put on a lot of makeup, trying to look older, things like that. But
That's hysterical. And where were you based at the time?
well, I started. Moved back to Tulsa. Actually, I got married to my then husband when I was 23 years old, a baby, and kind of started the business there, and built some relationships there. And then we moved to San Diego in '89, where I am now. And, just it really took off here. One of my biggest accounts that I got right off the bat was Charlotte Russe and
Ah,
the clothing company, because I knew the business. I grew up in it. And I remember I called the one of the CEOs. There are three brothers that owned Charlotte Russe, based in San Diego. I just kept calling and calling and calling. And he called me back one day and said, "I'm calling you to tell you to stop calling me." And then we hit it off, and it became my biggest client and helped them grow from 15 to 50 stores at the time. They ended up getting hundreds of stores and sold the company. But yeah.
that's wild. And so you had 10 successful companies in between. What was the most fun you had in building these companies? Obviously, I'm sure you had challenges along the way and
Oh, yeah. I had
right.
challenges along the way. Well, I'll tell you the companies, and then I'll tell you like some of the biggest challenges that I had, many over the years, right? That's how we grow. But I've really had a blast with the businesses. I had a scuba diving certification company, jewelry manufacturing company, love that, and we imported jewelry from around the world. Hair salons, three salons, homeopathic. Been a homeopathic physician. I was for 20 years.
Wow.
And then also started the first homeopathic college in Southern California. It still runs today. So started that in '99 and sold that in 2005. It's the Homeopathic
That's
Academy of
incredible.
Southern California. So yeah, it was kind of just whatever my passion was at the time.
Yeah.
I
But I mean, I
just
love that you allowed that to really drive you too. I mean, something that I talk to people about a lot. I have four kids, as you know, and four Gen Zers, and people are always asking me, are they going to take over Hint? And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I kind of doubt it, but I mean, more than anything, I just want my kids to be happy, right? And I
yes,
want them to figure out what they want to do every single day because they're going to need to work, and there's I think that is really kind of the driving thing, and what I see that people are. If you allow yourself to get stagnant or not really enjoy what you're doing, and I mean, the most successful people today are also, in my mind, the happiest, right? And are doing what they want to be doing every single day. And that's really the key thing. And I love that you really put that in the forefront in all of these companies.
Yeah, for me, I really learned that once I lose if I don't have the passion, that's everything for me. That's my driving force in creating success. So if I'm not feeling it here, then it's time to move on.
Yeah,
Um,
I love that, and I think that that's so important. So you decided Scale or Fail, obviously, is a fantastic book, and it really. So which came first, the conferences or the book? I mean, the and kind of
yeah,
the Scale It method versus. I mean, of the three, I guess is there three really key things there? The method.
yeah. I mean, the scale. Well, I think probably for this to make sense is why don't I tell you the wall that I hit
Mm-hmm.
so that I figured out the formula to scale. And back when I was running the agency, I created success very quickly. And I was young, I was making a lot of money, I was traveling around. My daughter was not quite two yet. And so outwardly, it looked like, wow, she's just created the perfect life. But what happened, Kara, is I didn't know how to scale. I didn't know how to delegate. I didn't know how to build the underpinnings of the foundation of the company. I just was like that rogue entrepreneur that I was great at getting clients, helping clients, but I was kind of the control freak. I thought I had to do it all. And so what ended up happening was I was just falling apart internally. I was exhausted. I was doing ad campaigns at 2 or 3 in the morning. I felt like I was suffocating in my own success, which is crazy. But I thought I should be happy, and I'm not happy, and I didn't even want to get up in the mornings, and so I was felt kind of like I was slowly dying,
Mm-hmm.
creating success. And but I was so afraid to leave because I thought, well, what if I can't recreate that success? And I ended up, from the stress of it all and being so exhausted, I was late one day to pick up my daughter from daycare, and I was, rushing to get her, and I ended up having a horrible car accident. Not, I didn't hit any cars, but I actually ran over myself with my own car when I was running out, to get her, which is sounds like a crazy story, but it actually does happen to
Insane,
people when
yeah.
they try to stop a moving car. And so I survived that. I mean, it was terrifying, and just from that moment, that coming out of that accident, I was like, okay, like, I don't care how much money I'm making, I can't live like this. And so I ended up walking away from that business. I basically handed it over to a partner that I had taken on. And then I ended up leaving my marriage, which was also, very challenging at the same time. And so from walking away from that, I felt such a sense of freedom, and really embraced that time to say, okay, there were some things I was doing really right, obviously, and there were things that I was really not doing well. So I took the time, I took a year and really dove into all of that. And I began to study the companies that like Ben and Jerry's, like Charlotte Russe, to understand how a company truly scales up. And that's when I started developing my formula, the Scale It method. And so all the companies since then, the 9 companies beyond that, I set them up to scale, where it's not all about Allison, like I really build a collaborative team, bring in other experts and things like that, which we've got today. And so that's really where I'm so passionate about this, because, Kara, so many business owners get stuck in that, like they have great traction, and then they hit a wall, and they have no life, and they have this big dream of running a business, but the business is running them into the ground,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't have time with their family. And, they just don't know how do they multiply the growth beyond them, right? So I always say, a successful business is one that you can actually leave for a good period of time and it is capable of running without you. And so that's really where the inspiration then to write the book Scale or Fail and the work we do with in Pinnacle Global Network with the business owners that we help to grow and scale. And many come in with those exact same pains, and I'm like, I've lived it.
I've been
I
here.
know this. Yeah.
And where do you think the pain really starts? Is it the realization, or is it based on the number of people or the dollars, or like where is it where you feel like there's a consistent thread?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like it's like the Bermuda Triangle. It all sort of comes together. I think they get into business, they really have a passion and they have a great vision. But, and I think the focus is like, let's just get business, let's get clients, which, you have to create cash flow. You need a revenue focused company. But I think the real challenge is that when you start a business, you're used to doing all the things. And even when you get employees, you still have your hands in everything because you don't want things to fall through the cracks. You're so afraid that something might fall apart and you've worked so hard to get as far as you can. And so you don't ever really let go. But realistically, once a company starts really expanding and you have these different departments, there's no way you can get your hands around everything. And so you start to choke the growth of your business. And you also send a message to your team like, I don't trust you, So it's more of this top-down mentality instead of a collaborative teamwork, which actually would take pressure off because the team actually wants to help, right? And so, and then, cash flow really gets tight because, again, you are the bottleneck and you are having to approve everything. And so it just slows down everything. And so I think it's, that saying, what got you here won't get you there, really says it all. What got you here is everything the reason you got into business. And maybe you were in a place of survival when you started the business, but that's not going to take you here. You need a different mindset. You need different operational practices, different marketing practices. You really need to restructure your business at this level.
I remember the EY organization said something to me years ago when I was one of their entrepreneurs in their program. And, it may sound really simple, but they said that the key to success is actually working outside of your company. When you can actually work outside of your company, and I guess it's to some extent what you're talking about, that you can actually leave your company for a little while and then that it's successful. But I think actually working outside of your company, that's where you're going to make the biggest impact, right? Whether that's connections or whatever, those are the things that your company really ultimately needs. So I think that it's super interesting to think about that now. So what are a couple of the steps of your STEP program? So the first two steps, what do you suggest?
Yeah, so, with the Scale It method encompasses 5 phases and 5 pillars. So there's 5 phases to scaling, from startup to being the 5th phase, which I call the visionary. And that's where, you're working outside your company, basically. You're working, I call it being in the clouds instead of the weeds of your business.
So true.
And then the 3rd phase, I'll just share I call the ringleader, because it's a circus. As you start building teams, at first, some of the biggest mistakes that the business owners make is being the boss instead of a leader, and not really clear on the type of roles that you need, and you start hiring out of bandwidth loss instead of strategic decisions. But these are phases that you should go through. But a lot of business owners, they just never leave a phase. They're there and the business kind of lives and dies there. So that there's the 5 phases. And then there's 5 pillars that you need to shore up in each phase to move forward. And those are, and it's in an acronym for SCALE. So the S is strategic vision. You have to have a strong vision so that you know where you're going. And vision is everything. But business owners spend an amount of time on vision because they just want to get right into strategy. But it tells everybody where to go. So it's critical. And it's also the why. It really infuses that inspiration to keep you going and taking the big leaps. The C is cash flow, which is the oxygen of your business, as you know. And anything that drives cash flow is in that pillar. So marketing, sales, finance, of course, getting a handle on your money, especially as you grow, you can lose it as fast as you make it. And then the A is alliance of the team. So alliance so that everybody is in alignment with the vision, and you're creating a collaborative culture. So you're hiring, your team building, and your culture. And then L is leadership. And that's our work on ourselves. And I know you do a lot on yourself and me as well. Every challenge in business gives us an opportunity to grow as a leader, but it's really how we show up in the world, how we show up with our team, and then our own mindset, our success mindset, money mindset, things like that. And then the E is execution. And that is, the vision tells you where you want to go, and then the execution tells you how are you going to get there. So it's the KPIs, it's the benchmarks, it's the delegation, systems, processes, things like that. So all 5 of those pillars need to be shored up. And they're, phase 1 challenges of cash flow are very different than phase 4 challenges of cash flow. So moving through each of those 5 phases with those 5 pillars.
So you started this program, you wrote the book, and then people wanted more. And I guess the conference kind of came around the same time as the book, right? Was that the initial?
Actually, so I started Pinnacle back in 2010, and I actually wrote a book in 2009 called Blast Off. That was my first book, and that was to help people start a business. And then as we help business owners grow through Pinnacle, it was like, well, we weren't really helping people start businesses anymore, because with the type of experience that I had, and we have 14 CEOs that have grown and scaled their own companies as our mentors for our company, I was like, gosh, we're doing all this great work. I need to put this in a book so that people can really understand the Scale It method that had evolved over 37 years of business. And so the book came out in 2018, but we started doing events back in 2011 was our first big 3-day event. And so we just did our, we've done many 3-day events since then. I think probably like 16 or something like that. But our big one that we do in January, we just did, and it was our 10th year hosting that event. I can't believe it. When I started doing these, I was terrified. I want to just tell you. And so to think here we are now 11 years in with Pinnacle, and it's definitely a labor of love.
Well, it's incredible. I mean, you had asked me to speak at one a few years back, and I've spoken at another one back in November. The other thing that I've been just so proud of you for doing is just not stopping. So the pandemic hits, and there are many people who rely on these events who were really struggling to try and figure out how do you move forward. We were actually in Hawaii at a group. We're part of a group together called the Unicorn Club, and it was this time last year. And I remember, there were a lot of conversations with a lot of the people that are part of that group trying to figure out exactly what to do, and do they hold the conferences, do they not hold the conferences? And this was while everything was just getting ready to kind of shut down. And And, I love that Allison, I mean, I think that there's two things about your business too that I've just been so impressed with is number one, how you handled 2020, but also just the fact that how you get people to know about you. I mean, you've really just engaged with social in a way that maybe traditional kind of businesses, they don't know how to do that, right? And I think that you've just been able to grow through Facebook and Instagram and maybe some other LinkedIn and some other platforms, primarily Facebook though, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what we have been at the longest, like most people. But
Yeah, but so
yeah,
doing groups along the way
yeah.
and just growing that. But anyway, talk to me about so this feeling last year trying to figure out what you were going to do with your conference and just talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we, like everybody else, when everything shut down, I actually was leading a client event. So the members of Pinnacle Global Network, we do 3 private events for them a year. And so we were in person in a hotel in San Diego, and literally we walked out of that conference and it was like, okay, everything's shutting down tomorrow. And so I was so glad that I got to meet with them then. And, of course, everybody was healthy. So everything was good there. But I sensed what was coming. And so we really, with our community, was like, okay, guys, you've got what it takes here. Like, I don't want you to pull back in fear. Like, we knew it was coming. And so we actually created a webinar in that very first week that were shut down on how to thrive in upheaval. And it was really just entrepreneurs out there to know, like, this is game time. This is what you were built for. Okay. It's one thing to grow business when, you know,
It's
it's
easy.
where when it's easy, which it's
Yeah.
never easy in business, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, totally.
But now it's really going to separate those that are willing to do what it takes. And so for me and our we have a couple hundred business owners in our community from all over the world, and it was really out of like, oh my gosh, we have to help them. We are not letting them go under. And so the whole team got together and said, okay, what are we going to do here? And so we immediately, so this was mid March, so the first week of May, so 6 weeks later, we led our first 3-day virtual event. We had never done anything like that. Now, we'd been on Zoom because we do coaching calls on Zoom for a couple of years, but this was in my living room. We had, and everybody was virtual because nobody was getting together. And we must have had 20 of my team in, behind the scenes, like just the walkie talkies that were going behind the scenes. And we had Barbara Corcoran speaking, and that was wonderful because she's just such a lovely lady. And we had hundreds of people on. I think maybe we had 700 in that first event virtually. And it
Crazy.
was the most amazing experience in it put everybody in this creative bubble of, hey, don't get sucked into the narrative that, like, it's over. This is time to pivot and reinvent yourself. So I want you to really pay attention to what are the demands of your market, what's your customer need right now, what are some new revenue streams that you can create to serve them, how can you reach out to them and say, hey, I'm here for you. And we just really helped them to get on top of the game. And so, here they were at first in panic, and we all were. Let's just say I was like, is this really going to work? And it ended up being unbelievably successful. And so many of our clients, Kara, ended up having their best year in
Yeah,
2020,
I
like
when you told
record
me
years.
that, it was
Yeah.
just amazing to me. But I just really think that it also just the way that you activated social too, and the way that you just got out in front of it, because there were plenty of people who really relied on events who just said, the store's closed, and you
Yeah.
didn't. And I just think it's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah. I think about sometimes, where does that come from? I don't know. I mean, I think that for me, I'm just so connected to my vision, and I know you're really connected with your vision for Hint. And I'm so determined
Mm-hmm.
to help these business owners thrive that I was like Mama Bear going, there is no way under on my watch that these businesses are going under. We're going to
Yeah.
do whatever it takes. And of course, my team, they just stepped up. I didn't even have to ask them. They were like doing all
Let's
these
do
extra
it. Yeah.
pivot, yeah, whatever it took. And so we ended up doing last year. We normally do 2 live events in person. We did 4 virtual events, and it's just about as much work to do a live event, but people are home and they needed the support. And of course you came, and you were on stage, which was awesome when we had that event back in September of last year, and you were just so phenomenal. So as always,
Oh, you're so
but
sweet.
yeah,
Well, I
it's
loved that you, sorry, I loved that you, when I went to that event too, what I realized is that, maybe the cost for actually producing an event, right, where you've got people coming in and maybe you're taking up more space in a hotel and all, I bet that the costs actually shifted, right? Because the quality of, I mean, you've always held really high quality stuff, but I think that the game changed a little bit. Like that there were, I mean, obviously, I felt totally safe, like socially distanced, and I, I felt like there were limited people in the room, and I was talking to a group, and I was telling somebody that I felt like even through the screens, I could feel people wrestling in their chairs. You really felt that there was a room, and so it's HDTV kind of quality. I don't know if it's called that, but it was really that. And I think that it just your conference was really the first place that I had seen that level of detail. And of course, if you're a
yeah.
speaker, you want to be at that level of detail as well. And I think that you guys just did a phenomenal job.
Oh, well, thank you. We really wanted to look, people are dying to get together, right? They miss one another. They miss the being in a room. And so we really want to create the experience for them like they're in a room. And especially you've got business owners, men and women that are home with their kids. I mean, there's a lot of demands on them and they're trying to focus and so forth. So we're
So
really
true.
helping them like, hey, take this 3-day break with us, which I know is hard for people to do. But when we can help them to see that, hey, you're going to be working on the business and not in it, and it's going to help you grow so much faster. And it's just like we make it fun. We get them out of their chair, we get them moving. We've got the big screen behind us so you can see everybody. And we send them swag boxes so they get this gift before the event. And we use our
I love
same
that.
event team that we did in person, so really making it a monumental experience. But I just think you've got to do these things for yourself. You've got to charge your batteries. As entrepreneurs, we put out so much energy, right?
Hmm.
And you may be like so inspired and so motivated, and then something happens and you get deflated. And so it's important to be around that energy. That's
Yeah,
how
and
you
be
and I
around people that are also challenged. They don't have to be in the same industry either. I think that
know.
that is so so key. So, well, I love it. And if you guys have not seen the conferences that Allison is doing, we'll definitely put a link in the recording and let everybody have a look at it because they're super incredible. And if you are, for example, trying to figure out exactly what you want to do moving forward and your business and just scaling it overall. I mean, I think just getting into one of Allison's conferences and the great thing about her conferences too is they're at different levels, right? So there were people that had at that conference I spoke to, that was the first time that they had come to your conference, right?
Yeah, so we do 3 big events a year that are open to the public.
Hmm.
And our clients love to go to those too because we bring in some of these top business experts like you from around the world. And so and the thing that is different about our events is that we're helping them build the blueprint to scale their business. So they actually leave with a plan, on all
So
levels
great.
of their business. So it's a working plan. It's like a working event. It's not just listening to speakers. It's actually developing a plan for their company. And so they can leave with that. And then if they are wanting further support, then we let them know about Pinnacle Global Network, and that's where we do ongoing mentoring and support and masterminds and we have some clients now with us for 10 years. So we have, a lot of our clients just, it's like we are their community. They don't want to leave. So
I love
we
that.
feel very, very fortunate.
That's so great. So the last thing I want to talk to you about is what I was hinting at early on. So this little passion of yours that you have set up in your backyard and hobby. I don't know how you define it, but Allison actually has a trapeze that she's been performing for 20 years. And it was funny. I wrote something on Twitter the other day and said what you wished you could do, and somebody said that they wish they could be on a trapeze or something. And I thought about you, and I was going to share some of your videos, and it's I couldn't find it right away, but I just said, you just always look like you're having so much fun, and so how did you get into having a trapeze in your backyard, but I think also
Yeah.
just enjoying that?
Oh my gosh. Well, I was a gymnast growing up. I was a competitive gymnast, and I had a gym teacher, Mr. Wilcox, who built a set of uneven bars in my backyard out of plastic tubing. And I used to just swing on those for hours and hours as a kid. It was like my happy place. And then, and I always loved the circus. I always looked at the trapeze artists and thought, oh my God, that's just so incredible. But it wasn't until my early 30s, and I actually had broken up with my boyfriend at the time and went to Club Med to get over a heartbreak. Okay. And I'd never done anything like that before. My sister actually like pushed me out the door to go. And they had the whole flying trapeze there. I was like, you got to be kidding me. And so I got up there and I just immediately was hooked. And they were like, oh, you're a gymnast. So they had me in the show that night.
Oh
Okay.
my
Like I didn't
God.
even know what I was doing. And I said, I've got to do this at home. And so I found my coach, who ended up being my coach for 20 years, 5-generation circus family, the Flying Guyonas, and they flew for Ringling Brothers for 25 years and performed for the Queen and all this stuff. And so they're in LA. And so I used to drive up to LA every week, sometimes 3 or 4 hours back and forth, depending on traffic on the 405. And so, yeah, that was for 20 years. And then we moved into this house that has a lot of land now 5 years ago. And part of I was just telling my husband, I really want my own trapeze. And he was like, seriously? And so whenever we would look, I'd go walking around going, where would a trapeze fit? And so when we moved into this place, and then I was like, God, I remember just saying to myself, is this absolutely nuts to build your own trapeze? But I found somebody that built things for Cirque du Soleil, and I had this built, and I fly on it probably 2 or 3 times a week, and it is the thing about this, and really anything that you're really engrossed in. Let's say you're playing golf, or you're a motorcycle rider, or whatever it is that you do, or you're a painter. It takes you in the moment. So when you're up on that trapeze, you have to be present.
Yeah.
You cannot be thinking, you'll have an
What am
accident.
I
Like you,
eating for dinner or anything? Yeah, you have
yeah,
to be.
no. It's like, and I actually, as I'm climbing the ladder, I'm telling myself, Allison, be here, be in this moment, because you need to really pay attention. And I can be all over the place, like most entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So, but every time I'm up there, I face my fear. Every time I'm up there, I break through to another level, and I
I
I
love
love
that.
it.
Yeah, and you put yourself into positions where maybe they're a little scary, but then it becomes relaxing, right? And I love that you seek out these opportunities. So, and you just added, I saw in one of your videos, you added some different things to it. I'm guessing that those were things that were sort of taking it to the next level.
Yeah, I started taking the safety lines off a few years ago, and because where I train, they use the safety lines. So, yeah, it's like I have to do it right so that I actually land in the net and things like that. But,
I love that.
training smart, I have a good coach, right? I really believe in having a great coach that stretches you, but also makes sure that you're safe. But yeah, I love it, and my intention is that I'll be flying on the trapeze till I'm 100. So
I love that.
you have to quote me on that one.
Yeah, I will, and I am quite sure that you will as well. So this is so great. So where do people find out more about Allison Maslin and also just all of your conferences as well?
Yeah, so pinnacleglobalnetwork.com is where you'll find everything about me. We have our podcast on there, which you've been on, called The Scale or Fail Show. And you'll find our events that are there. And we actually have one coming up here called Scale It Live, and that one's at scaleitlive.com. But yeah, Pinnacle Global Network, and that's where all our happenings are.
I love it. So this is so much fun, and I so much appreciate everything about you, Allison. And it's so great just hearing more about your focus on helping others scale their company. And you've certainly seen through building all of your companies how to do it and what the challenges are. And before we sign off, I mean, I think more than anything, you mentioned it a couple of times, finding what you're really interested in doing every day, but also just dealing with your fears head on and putting challenges on purpose into your own life. And it's a lot of what I talk about in my book, Undaunted, as well. And just if you haven't picked up a copy, definitely pick up a copy of that as well. But also, if you love this episode, which I certainly did, definitely give it 5-star rating. And if you have a question for me or want to nominate somebody great for the show who's a founder or CEO, definitely get in touch. And I'm at Kara Golden and with an I. And that's it. And we're so excited that you joined us today. And we're here every Monday and Wednesday, by the way. And very, very excited that you guys joined us. So thanks so much, everyone.